morning, Quadcopter 101 here. I'm doing a couple cool reviews this morning. One with the WL Toys V686G. I'm playing around with sunshades for it to see if that helps. But the main review I'm doing here is a review of the JJRC H12C. Now what I want to do today is I want to take a closer look at its video capability. I'm going to keep its video camera on throughout the flight. Another thing I'm going to look at today is what happens when this thing loses control or loses reception from the transmitter. I know this is advertised at 300 meters, but initial flights that I've done so far, there's no way that this thing is going to make the 300 meters. It looks like the real range of this is somewhere between 80 to 100 meters. Now, the issue that I had when I would fly at the 100 meters and when I lost reception from this transmitter, I was unable to regain control of the quadcopter. It more or less auto-rotated all the way to the ground in both instances that I lost reception from the transmitter. So, and I tried to rebind the quadcopter in flight, but I could not regain control of the quadcopter after it started dropping. So one thing I want to try here is to see if I turn the transmitter off and on again, if I'll be able to regain control of the quadcopter. So we're going to look at that. And the third thing I want to look at is the return to home feature. And that's activated by pressing this button. Now, the way I understand it, by reading the directions, is that this is not going to exactly bring it straight back to you. What it does is it activates headless mode. And for this quadcopter, the quadcopter remembers the initial bearing that it was on when it was bound to the transmitter. And based on that, it has a general idea of the area where it's at based on using its accelerometers and gyroscopes. Now that accuracy is probably, it thinks it'll try to remember if it's in the right forward quarter or the right forward left quarter, or the back right quarter, back left quarter. That's the type of accuracy this thing probably has. And what it does is, when you activate that, you want to keep your finger off of the pitch roll button, okay? And it's going to start a general movement back in your general direction. And when it gets close to the closest point of approach to you, then you're supposed to take over. And remembering it's in headless mode while it's doing this return to home, then you use the pitch roll stick based on the base heading from that you set at takeoff, and move the stick 180 degrees from where it's at to bring it in that final direction back to you. And let's see if that actually happens that's the way the way I read the instructions, how this works. So we're going to check that out too. So let's go into the first thing. First thing is, what happens when this quadcopter loses reception, and can we regain reception from the transmitter by turning it off and on and rebinding it in air? So first off, I need to bind the quadcopter. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to give it a little bit of throttle. Then I'm going to turn off the transmitter. Okay, now it's lost reception. Then I'm going to turn on the transmitter, see if I can regain control of it. So now let's see if I can do that while it's flying in air, tumbling in air, coming down to the ground. Let's do the same thing. Okay, giving it a little bit of throttle, turning off the transmitter. It's tumbling to the ground. Now I'm going to turn off and on the transmitter while it's tumbling to the ground and see if I can throttle up, throttle back. So yeah, that's the way you're going to need to regain control of this. If you lose reception from this transmitter, you're going to need to turn off the transmitter and turn it back on, and then do a quick rebind to regain control of the quadcopter. That's unfortunate. You know, it'd be nice if it would automatically regain the transmitter, but what I had was, I was about 300 meters or 300 feet up, and it entered auto rotation all the way to the ground while I'm just moving up and down on the transmitter throttle. It just couldn't rebind. But that's how you rebind it. You have to turn off the transmitter, turn it back on, and then do a rebind as it's tumbling to the ground. Okay, let's go into the flight. I'm going to keep the camera on throughout this flight. Turning the camera on. And let's set it. Okay, that is the general direction for headless mode, off straight ahead where it's going. We'll go off to the forward right. I got the camera on, and I'm going to activate return to home. It's entering its closest point of approach now. I'm going to go 180 degrees out and bring it back in the final direction. So that's how the return to home works. Again, and just remember, it's a general position where it's at. Let's send it straight ahead and see if it comes back. Straight ahead down that headless mode direction. Activating return to home. Again, I'm keeping my right finger off this right button, and yes, it does return to home. Okay, turning that off. Let's go to the forward left. Activating return to home. It seems to come down the bearing is what it does. And going 180 degrees out. Okay, turning off. So let's bring it in real quick. I'm going to turn the camera off too, after it gets down to the ground, and we're going to discuss what we've learned here, how this works. Video off. Okay, what it did was, when I hit that return to home, okay, we sent it down that bearing, and then we activated return to home. And what it did, when I was off to the right or the left, it would come back down that bearing. So it essentially did the same thing that you would do if you'd entered headless mode and pulled back on the stick. Now let's go to the back rear quadrant from that position and activate headless mode and see if it does the same thing, if it brings it back to us or if it goes further away. So that would be a problem if it would go further away based on that initial heading that it set. So we're going to set that heading again. We're going to use the actually, this time we're going to use the length of the field as the base heading. Pointing it down the field. Turning the transmitter off and on again. Resetting. Okay, so now this is our new base heading. And let's go down. Let me turn on the camera again. I want to get video while I'm doing this. Okay, activating return. No, it just goes further down that heading. So essentially all it does is, when you activate the return to home, it's the same as pulling back on the stick for the headless mode. Okay, I'm forward down that base heading, pressing the button, and again it just goes backwards as if you pulled the stick back on headless mode. Now the headless mode does work. Okay, if you want to use it for return to home, I recommend pointing your transmitter down the base heading and then pushing the pitch roll stick in the exact opposite position from where it's at in the sky. In this case, I'd be pushing it back to the back right from the forward quadrant, and then keep 180 degrees always, pointing the stick 180 degrees out from where it's at, and that brings it back overhead. Turning off headless mode. Now, I want to take a look at the camera. Let's go for a flight around the field, keeping it within 80 meters of my position, because we know what happens. And if I lose control of this quadcopter, I know what I need to do is to turn off the transmitter, turn it back on, and do a manual rebind. Am I recording? Yes, my camera icon is on my screen. I want to see the quality of this video, what it is. There's probably some jello. Oh God, I flew right through the sun. I can't see what I'm... Oh, here it is. If there's jello in this video, I know I've heard people complain about jello with this quadcopter. What I'm going to do is look at means of stiffening up the quadcopter's camera. Okay, I'm entering hover right now. I'm doing a rotate. And let's go to make a right banking turn and come up the field this time. It seems to be a nice flyer, very nice flyer. Again, I'm keeping it within 80 meters because I'm worried about that range drop off. But it seems to be a very nice flyer. Very nice flyer. I don't know what people are complaining about its flight abilities. It's very nice. Hello there. How's my lights? Are they flashing yet? Yeah, they're flashing. So I'm going to land it now. So that seems to be about the flight time you get with this quadcopter. And turning off the camera. No, that was activating headless mode. Turning off the camera is this button. So, what did we learn? We learned that when you hit the return to home feature, all it does is it enters headless mode and then it pulls back on the pitch roll stick. So it comes back down that bearing. That's okay if you enter headless mode and always keep the quadcopter forward of you down that bearing, but it's not going to work if the quadcopter is behind you. In that case, I would not recommend, and well, you could enter headless mode. In that case, you just push forward on the stick to bring it back toward you. So don't depend on the return to home to bring it directly back to you. It does remember the heading for headless mode throughout the flight, which is good. So you can use this as a return to home if you know how. Again, in that case, wherever position it is in the sky, you point your transmitter in the direction of the base heading and push the pitch roll stick 180 degrees out from that position to bring the quadcopter back to you. It will work for a return to home in that case. We took a look at what happens when you lose control of the quadcopter. You need to turn off the transmitter, turn it back on, and do a quick rebind to regain control. And we took a look at the video. I hope the video came out on this. So that's my first real review of the abilities of the H12C. What I've done so far is some quick looks at it, but I hope you enjoyed this flight. This is Quadcopter 101 with the H12C. Signing out.